Welcome, folks, to the last session of the GenAI track. So we're wrapping it up with the panel. Hope everybody had a lot of fun, like Harshad and Vikram mentioned in the morning. I saw you guys networking a lot and engaging a lot, asking questions. So we had a very, very diverse set of speakers, right? With applications ranging from mental health to satellite technology, from people talking about AI being used to compilers to actually OSs which can host various AI servers. So I have with me, right, to wrap this session, I have a group of very, very diverse and talented panelists, right? So there is Vikram Srinivasan. So we got 4 founders. Vikram Srinivasan from Needle.ai, Karthik Shashidhar from Babbage, Harshad Sai from Able Credit, and Kiran Chandra from Swecha. And I am Gaurav Bhalotia. I'll be moderating this panel. So to start this discussion, I'll request all the panelists to take turns. Tell me about one key takeaway, right, or moment of insight from the talks they heard today. And what stood out for them, right? What stood out for you and why from what you heard today? We'll start with Vikram.
Thanks, Gaurav. I think you're putting me in a very tough spot because it's hard to pick one from all the talks that were there. So to me, I mean, I've been having some long discussions. I think there are certain aspects which are being worked on here, which I found very inspiring, which is sort of AI for India, right? And I think Kiran is doing a whole bunch of work. But I thought that was, I mean, the work they're doing is very inspiring. But I thought one of the ideas which for me was a huge aha moment was this whole discussion around data licensing. I think that's a very, very powerful idea if we can bring it to life, because these data monopolies that are there and these kind of model monopolies that are there, we can fundamentally break that. I mean, this is not necessarily a technical idea, but I think it's a foundational idea that can have very far-reaching consequences. So to me, that was probably the most interesting one.
To be very honest, I've been in and out of a lot of talks. So I've caught little snippets of different talks. It's almost like I've been through sort of a highlights reel of the day. And I think I'm very interested to find out. So again, I largely spent most of my time in this room listening to the LLM-based talks. And it's interesting how other people are using LLMs for different purposes. So for example, there was this, the one thought that sticks to my mind, probably the only note I made in my phone today was in terms of, so one of the issues that we are grappling with here is in terms of how do you use LLMs to tell stories. And in the talk by the person from Zomato, I think he was talking about how they get the LLM to first generate a JSON from whatever they're doing and then use that to convert that into natural language stories. And I think that's the one thought that stayed with me today, which I am likely to implement as part of my product.
Cool.
Thanks, Gaurav. What stood out for me was the adoption of the technology. So essentially, the good part is we are not just debating about the technology anymore, and we are all the talks, right? They are going deeper into the application, the licensing, the data model, right? So I think that's a very healthy sign that we just get to be part of a technology adoption curve where the basics are not debated, right? And everybody is moving into the depths of it. So it's just fun to be part of such a technology adoption curve. Maybe I missed out on internet. I was probably not, I'm not old enough, hopefully. But it's fun to be part of, maybe getting a chance to be part of a technology adoption curve where this is happening. So that's what stood out for me.
Thank you, Gaurav. And I think today has been a very fabulous and fantastic day. And as you mentioned, Zomato story was also very truly inspiring. But more than that, there have been people, this has been a confluence of all the people who want that India should lead the way in this AI transformation, just not adoption, but the AI transformation as a whole. And it gives us a lot of confidence that yes, this is the time for us to move further forward and let us say set the ground rules. Not that we just are followers of anything anymore. We're going to set the ground rules, and I really felt that there's going to be a lot of constructive feedback in shaping the entire licensing system that we have been thinking about. And I am just going to go back from here and speak to all the people who have been working on this for some time and say that, look, this is something which is being approved and people are eagerly waiting for it to be done. And for sure that we are not in 1991 anymore, and we are in 2024. And here we have got a lot of synergy and energy, and also an alternative dimensions of where we can do things differently also. And I think the internet was supposed to be a leveler, but I think as Vikram also pointed out, the data monopolies that came in between had really took away. But this is an opportunity for us to intervene and ensure that AI as a new productive force is going to be a real leveler, where that the 1600 languages that are there in India, people would still be able to speak in their own language, and AI is going to be a leveler so that the other person understands it in his own language. And I think this, I'm confident that we'll be able to achieve it sooner than later, and that is what I'm going to take and go home from here.
Thank you. So yeah, so see one thing which coming out from all of what you're saying, AI is really it's real in India, right? So people are applying to various different types of things. It's moved ahead in the value chain, right? I could see from all the speakers, right? They were talking about the realities, right? What can AI do? What can LLMs do? What they cannot, right? And from audience also, there was like very, very keen and sharp understanding of limitations, right? Because the questions were very, very interesting, right? So I attended the Karthik's AI analyst thing, right? And I was surprised, like so many people asking questions and like almost grilling him, right? You are saying AI will be creative and I'll put some adult supervision, right? To make sure it does not go unbridled, right? And people are asking, can you just, creativity, can it actually create data for you, right? Which an analyst is doing, right? So it's real, right? So people are very serious, right? I seriously hope, right, what Kiran you're saying, in this wave, right, India is not left behind, right? We are able to use this technology, right, to the fullest, right, and preserve, right, all the languages, all the applications, right, what we are good at, right, and see if we can use AI, right, to enhance this further. With that, right, I would like to move to the next question. This is what emerging trends in generative AI do you think will have biggest impact, right, in the next 2 to 3 years, right? All of you guys are founders working on different areas, applications, right? So what new developments you are actually particularly excited about, right? So what are these emerging trends, right, next 2 to 3 years? I think we can come back in that order now.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I would see that AI is going to be a potential leveler. And there are certain more things that for this to happen, I think that there needs to be a lot of awareness that needs to be brought into the community, and not just the developer community, but also as users of AI. And demystification of this technology is something that we need to be doing. When the computers first came to the country, people thought that it was something a Brahma Padartha, right? And that low compute capacity was considered to be something. And a sharp person was synonymously considered to be a computer, right? So that kind of a mystified environment was in which, when I say about 1991 is a landmark year, that was then. But now I think we need to move on to demystify this tech sooner than later. And we need to build up a narrative as a constructive, productive force that is going to be an enabler. People are construing it to be something, the way in which AI has been vilified, even before it entered into the Indian market, even if it was being consumed before, it has been so badly vilified, AI has become synonymous to job loss. Rather, you see, when the printing press came in, there were a lot of scribes that lost their jobs, which was a very lucrative job market for hundreds and hundreds of years. But the net result of jobs that were created by the printing press, yes, there was displacement. But after we have the total number of jobs that were created as a consequence of printing press was more than the number of jobs lost by the scribes. So my point here is there might be some displacement, but more than the displacement, the vilification of it, the real issues of data biases, the licenses, etc., need to be made open to the public, and there needs to be a lot of education around this, which becomes a part of practitioners, developers, and the policymakers that I think would be very crucial for us to adapt AI faster and ensure that more solutions also come out.
So more solutions around humanizing AI, you are saying.
Exactly.
For me, I think I moonlighted as a maths tutor in my life. So the exciting part of me, for me, is that this technology gets people to take maths seriously, right? It's one side effect that you see young kids who would otherwise say, "कि यार maths पढ़ के क्या करना है?" Now, because this technology has become a force of, even monetary incentives, you see people start taking maths seriously, you see people start taking academics seriously, compilers seriously, and whatever, right? So I think that's a great sign to have.
I think one thing I'm excited about, which has already been happening for a year or two, but it's going to happen even more, is that we have a lot of open source AI coming. I mean, started with the leakage of the first Llama model and stuff, but now it is becoming more and more kind of, it's becoming a sort of a norm that to the extent possible you open source and things like that. And this is a good counter narrative to all the AI doomerism that we have and stuff. So, and also it allows us to, that we have open source AI, LLMs, allows us to deploy it in a way that where we don't necessarily need to depend on the large gatekeepers. And I think this is going to play a huge role in terms of democratizing AI and democratizing the use cases and things like that.
I'll just pull on the thread a little bit more. I know a lot of people are talking about hallucinations and other things, but I'm not going to go there. I think, see, at the end of the day, if you want to democratize AI for everyone, truly democratize it, take it down to the lowest level of people and make it affordable for humans anywhere. It's about how we work with resource constraints, right? And we have seen examples of how to work with language resource constraints, which is what Svecha folks have been doing, and how to work around that. Second is resource constraints around compute, right? Like if you saw Gaurav's talk from Monster AI. So how do you sort of do distributed, sort of SETI at home kind of ideas and try to leverage existing compute? And I think the third thing is, I know we've been talking about data monopolies and all of that, but there is also compute infrastructure monopolies that need to be broken, right? Like NVIDIA, how the heck can we let NVIDIA get away with murder for the next 5 years, right? How do we break that infra monopoly? I think if we really want to democratize AI, we need to solve for these resource constraint problems. It has to work at scale very, very cost efficiently. And I think that's a fundamentally important problem to solve. I think the transformer architecture, everyone knows. Next token prediction, everyone knows. We will solve hallucination. I have no doubts about all of that. But resource constraints and cost efficiency, we need to solve for.
So yeah, so it's interesting to hear ki all of you guys are very, very gung-ho, positive about what it can do, right? So the question is the changes, innovations which are needed in humanizing it, democratizing it, right? Making it more and more accessible to people, right? Thank you, panelists. So we'll wrap this panel, right? So one more question with the last question, we'll wrap it up. I'm also getting this question, right, from folks outside. For young developers, researchers, right, people who are picking it up, right? So a lot of our audiences here today were ones who wanted to see what's going on in the field of GenAI, right? Let me see what people are doing. How are they making it practical, right? How are they making it accessible? So what would be your advice, right, to these young researchers, developers, right, who are coming in and are going to be adopting, right, some of these technologies, right? What would be that one advice you would want to give to them?
Gaurav, you, me, and Harshad were just having a chat outside, so I'm going to repeat the answer you gave. That's okay. Which is, so, sorry, you might not be able to give the same answer again, which is that today, as he said, lots of things have already gotten democratized. Compute is so accessible for students. Laptops are available. access to education via YouTube videos, etc., has become completely democratized. I'm totally stealing your thunder. And third, there are all kinds of credits available out there, right? So there's nothing stopping anyone with a laptop and an internet connection to go get their hands dirty and put something out there. So maybe Harshad will talk about this very high-end kid who's been volunteering for us, who came and sought some advice from Harshad just now. He can talk about it. But I think the barriers are so low. Internet availability in India is so low. Almost everyone has access to a laptop. Just go for it. Get your hands dirty. That's the only way to go about it.
What I would say is, I think what the last 2-3 years have shown is that there can be times when the kind of technology that's available can shift suddenly. So in that sense, I think my advice to the youngsters will be like, don't be sort of wedded to particular domains or technology and things like that. Be more willing to learn. Be on the lookout for what's coming up. I mean, don't go fad chasing, but also like if there is a new way of doing things, learn that new way. Maybe it's going to help you somewhere. So.
I think one extension of that is when I often see resumes while we interview for job, etc., is everyone trying to do the same thing, right? Everyone building a sentiment analyzer, etc. But if you actually look at the innovation that has happened, it has happened at all levels of stack, right? So GenAI has brought together a compiler research back again, right? People, the Triton, we had a very nice workshop yesterday on Triton. It was a PhD research of a person which was adopted by OpenAI. The BroadFloat 16, BrainFloat 16 data type used by Google, and now it's popularizing because you can use lesser amount of compute RAM in GPU. It came out of their research into how do they avoid large amount of data transfer over a network, right? So it's a networking related research. So I think one advice would be to not just try to go after the use cases. It's a broad world out there, so you can innovate on the compilers, the networking layer, the data storage layer, the hardware layer, right? So all of these layers of the stacks have been thrown open to innovation. And it would be possible for someone to go deep into the area that they already know or the area that they find interesting rather than what the market is talking about or what the mainstream news is talking about. Just go after things that you find interesting in your stack. You can still do innovation in GenAI at that level. Yeah.
So for the question has multiple components. So I think the first part is for the young budding developers who would want to join the pool. I would honestly request them to, first is they need to be good at maths, which he has already pointed out, and one programming language where one should be a master of it, and learn at least one language. The serious problem that I really find out when I keep interacting with a lot of students is they neither speak in English because they've been educated in the so-called English medium schools, the large chunk of it, and they don't have an understanding about their mother tongue. And this actually becomes a problem for them because they can't understand the production process also. And the best of the kids who are coming out with use cases. So I've been experimenting with some of the rural folks who don't go very bad at English and good at math and engineering students. I figured out that with people who are engaged in understanding the way things are produced, rather than if you ask where do you get a bag of rice from and somebody says that it's from a supermarket, then it's the case, see, they would never be able to build any use cases in AI. The thing is, if they look at the production processes, understand them, and it is from them that the people-centric solutions are actually emerging. I think for the young budding kids, I would want them to inquisitively understand how the production process as a process happens. And I think, and as far as the researchers are concerned, I would honestly believe that they should stop looking at getting their papers published in ACM. And sorry for taking names, but some of those journals, those days are gone. And we can't be a subservient research to the top universities of the global north. I would say that India and the third world and the developing countries or the global south has got its own loci. The most of the population is here. Most of the people are here. The problems that need to be solved for these sets of people are something else. Maybe what I would want to see from the researchers in the coming conferences is not solving the problems of the huge layered infrastructure for the global north, but rather we should be actually coming out with solutions that are core to the Indian polity.
Indigenous problem.
I would not say indigenous, global south. I mean, we are not indigenous. I would not want to get into that, but we are even more native than them. So indigenous is something has got its own attribution. So I'm sorry for that. But my point is that we need to have solutions that are centric, people-centric, and that actually there needs to be a paradigm shift in that. And I would, for all the developers who are working in the industry, they have very little choice to do at their workplaces because they need to produce and do whatever the instructions that come from the top, unless and until they are from the startup ecosystem where they can work on their own. For all of those, what I would suggest is that take some time off in your days, spend something to build something for the Indian context, for the people of this nation, and people who have not got access to some of these technologies. I think these three layers, this is what I would say that would be the appeal from my side.
That's a great appeal to close it. So thank you, panelists. Right? Thanks, Vikram, Karthik, and Harshad and Kiran. Yeah, so I'll just add to that. Vikram already mentioned some of my thoughts. So I'll add and I think I heard it from the panelists, right? Don't get stuck up to like a particular technology or stack, right? As an AI researcher, right? Solve real problems, right? I think this is an opportunity. What I feel is to have that high level thinking, right? As an AI researcher, right? Normally earlier as an engineer, you would get a sub problem to work on, right? But as an AI researcher, you need to understand that high level, right? Who is the user? Where is the data? What is the AI capable of solving? What is it not, right? So you can actually like create a much larger impact, right? You can actually look at a much larger scope, right? And hence, I totally resonate, right? There are so many problems around us, right? Both of you guys said, right? Don't get stuck, right? By like how others are defining problems, right? Go discover your own problems, right? That's where the fun is. Okay, thank you everybody in the audience. Thanks to the volunteers and thank you panelists.